All right, let's go ahead and go over our bell work. Question number one asked identify the three parts of Freud's personality. Mr. Rosinski.
I've got past Maryland.
You need to make sure that you're working here, manipulating the material, increasing your long-term memory. Otherwise, you're going to struggle later on down the road. Miss Faith. Id, ego, and superego. Id, ego, and superego. Which one of those is represented by the angel on one's shoulder? Sir? The superego. Which one's represented by the devil on one's shoulder? Still. The id. Which one of those is the only one of the three that is present at birth? Present at birth. Dylan? What is it? The id is the only one that's present at birth. Which one makes up the largest portion of the iceberg metaphor? The id, ego, or superego. Which one makes up the largest portion of it? Mr. Donovan?
Ego.
The ego is a good guess. It's always a humbling experience here to miss a question. You have another guess?
Oh, no.
You got two other options, 50% chance of getting it right. You have either the superego or the id.
I have 50% chance of being wrong though.
And that is true.
That would be 2 for 3.
You're
I'm gonna pass.
going to pass. Dylan, good try. It is the id. The id makes up the majority of the iceberg that's below the surface. Again, that's a part of our, represented by our unconscious mind, or reflective of our unconscious mind there. Okay. Which one of the three components there is mostly influenced by social components, like agents of socialization? Which one of the three, id, ego, or superego, susceptible to influence by those? Dylan? It would be the superego, right? More specifically, your parents. That agent of socialization impacts the development of your superego. You know, knowing the rules, what's right, wrong, those type of things. Okay. Second question: the 5 psychosexual stages. We've gone through a few of them. We got just a couple more today. What would those be, Ms. Blakes?
Oral, phallic.
You got oral, phallic. You got one in between the oral and the phallic stage, though. Which one are we missing?
Latency.
Nope. Good try. Yes.
Oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital.
There you go. So oral, anal, phallic, latency, and then genital. Okay. Somebody give me some evidence that would say that we developed a fixation during our oral stage. Mr. Rosinski.
Bite your nails, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. He's got his hands in there, his mouth. Other evidence. Yes, Ms. Faith. Chewing gum. Good. Anything else, Dylan? Yep, exactly. Yeah, that would be good evidence there as well. Okay. Maybe also a reflection of regression, right? Regressing to a childlike state. Again, that's a defense mechanism, though. What's the resolution to the phallic stage? What's a healthy resolution to the phallic stage? Ultimately, what does a young girl, young boy do? Miss Olivia? Miss Bear.
The female falls in love with her father and the male falls in love with her.
Okay, but what's the resolution to that conflict there? A healthy resolution.
The female finds a spouse like her father.
Okay, yeah, that may be so. What are they going to do themselves, the female here? What are they going to acquire so that they can eventually do that, right? Find a spouse that's like their opposite sex. Miss Faith?
Take on personality traits from
Good. The same sex characteristics. So a young female will take on the characteristics of mom. Male will take on the same characteristics of dad in the hopes and desire of finding somebody that's like mom or like dad. Okay. Question number 3, what's a fixation? Miss Sarah?
You get stuck in a stage.
Yep, get stuck in it, right? You remember that results from too little or too much gratification. It's like the Goldilocks syndrome. You know, you got to have it just right in order for you to move through these stages in a healthy manner. And the last one, what's libido? How did we describe that, Miss Minton?
Gas tank of psychic energy.
Yeah, and if you have too many fixations, you use up too much of your libido, and then you don't have anything left over, and that's what makes you susceptible to personality disorders such as anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, later on in life, right? Any questions about our bower? Nope. All right, let's do our word of the day. You need a sheet of notebook paper. Sheet of paper, don't you? Alright, fabricate. Fabricate's our word. It means to come up with something, almost like out of thin air. To invent. And to then deconstruct. The spy is going to fabricate a new identity in order to blend into the community and go unnoticed. Synonyms, Ms. Patrick?
Create.
Create, Ms. Minton?
Develop,
To, say again?
develop.
Develop. To create and to develop. Part of speech. Mr. Brzezinski?
Verb.
Verb. Not passing on that one. Antonyms. Go with the D trifecta. Dylan? Destroy. One more D. Ms. Argo. No? Faith? Diminish. That'll work. Diminish. Alright, we're doing metaphors again. The class is a zoo. She is a peacock. Something. Without using like or as. Article in Upfront Magazine. It's titled, Is Freedom in Trouble? Every year for the past 4 decades, Freedom House, an organization, has rated all nations on how free they are. The 2018 report raises some alarms. Who's free and who's not? Freedom House divides nations in 3 different categories: not free, partly free, and free, based on their score on a scale of 0 to 100. Scores are based on ratings of various factors relating to political rights and civil liberties. The United States scored on a scale of 1 or 0 to 100. What do you think we scored? Let's see.
45.
45? Yes?
66.
66?
104.
104? We're off the scale. 86 is what we scored, right? Interesting to see that had our suggestions are so low. You guys feel like your freedom is taken away from you? Yeah. That's a decline from 94 in 2010, so it is decreasing. And much lower than Canada's score. Anybody know what Canada's freedom score is? No. Canada's score is going to be higher than 86. 98? It's 99. 99. If you want to be freedom, you experience all-out freedom, better head north, right? Alright, there is a list of the worst of the worst here. We got 10 of the worst countries in the world when it comes to freedom. Yes?
North Korea.
Yep, the Hermit Kingdom is an isolated police state. It is on the list of 10. It's not ranked, but they're in the 10. Anybody else? Any guesses? The worst of the worst?
Venezuela?
Venezuela? That's a good guess. They have definitely decreased in freedoms over the past year or so, but not on the bottom 10 yet. Right. Anything else? Yes?
Russia.
Russia? No, you would think because of the new Iron Curtain internet. No, not so much. Yes?
China?
Yeah, I think of the Great Wall, the Great Firewall of China. No, not on the bottom 10 yet. Yep. Asia, well, that'd be a continent, so there's a lot of possibilities there. There are a few from Asia in here. Yes?
Sudan.
Sudan is correct. Why would you say Sudan? That's impressive.
I don't know, it's just like a really war-torn country.
Yeah, an embattled dictatorship. And going along with Sudan, since they've had war-torn and newly created. Yes?
Would Cuba be?
Not yet. No. No, we tried, but I like the way they're thinking. South Sudan. Yeah, that's a country as well. Give you some hints on the last one, the others. This one is in the Middle East. They have a civil war going on. It's about to conclude. There's been some issues with chemical weapons being used in this particular. Syria, President Assad there. I don't use chemical weapons, he says, as he's got a gas mask on. There's a country it's near the Horn of Africa. It begins with an E. It's a pretty small country. Anybody remember their maps from Global Cultures class? It's close to Ethiopia, but it's not Ethiopia. What is it? It's close to Egypt, farther south east from Egypt. It's small. Not Equatorial Guinea, but Equatorial Guinea is actually ironically on the list, but that's on the opposite side of Africa, on the southwest coast.
Good job.
It's actually a country called Eritrea. You guys ever heard of Eritrea? Got North Korea. There's a stand in here, one that begins with a T. Turkmenistan. There's another stand that begins with a U. Uzbekistan. There's another country on the list that has a tendency to track down journalists and dismember them.
North Korea.
No.
Like that's on there.
Nobody heard about this in the news over the past year? This guy was actually in Times Magazine Person of the Year candidate because it's a... Say again? No, not Pakistan.
Was this a reporter that wrote something bad about the prince?
Yep, and what country would that be? The prince is found where?
Iran?
Close.
Arabia?
It's, Saudi Arabia, Iran's greatest enemy. Yeah. What's the guy's name, the journalist?
Bishigan or something? I think it starts with K.
Khashoggi. Khashoggi is his name, yep. And this one is actually the Horn of Africa. They're known for their pirates.
Oh,
Like
Somalia.
actual modern day,
Somalia.
Somalia. That's all of them. Alright, you can use freedom, these countries, Canada, in your sentence. Make sure you got a metaphor in there. Make sure you have fabricate in your sentence as well. Go ahead and share with the front person behind you. Make sure that you're listening for the metaphor.
I said Canada fabricates freedom for its citizens.
And I don't know.
Miss Carstens, what you got? Nothing? Miss Blaze?
North Koreans were caged birds when you fabricate new adopted
Caged birds. Very good. Very good. Yeah, it's a hermit kingdom. They isolate them from the rest of the world. They have this policy in North Korea. It's called the Sungun policy. It means that they are constantly in a state of war, and so they kind of, we call it indoctrinate, right? They're socialized to believe that they're in a constant struggle with the imperialists of the Western world, like the United States. All right, let's look at these three images and then match them up with Freud's psychosexual stages. This one, of course, would go with which of the stages? Mr. Patrick?
Oral stage.
The oral stage, right? So fast they put things in your mouth, oral fixation there. What about this one here? Which one would that one go with? Anything done? Phallic stage, it's a good guess. Yes. Ms. Blakes?
Oh, anal stage.
Anal stage. You're correct. Why is it the anal stage? How is this reflective of the anal stage? Ms. Blakes?
Okay. It said that like if they spent too long or too short on it, they would like be either clean or messy.
Yes. So you either, which of the personality types that we mentioned? There's two personality types potential personality types develop as a result of a fixation with the anal stage. Ms. Dell?
OCD and the slob.
Okay, but OCD would be associated with one of the personality types. What's the specific name for the personality?
Anal expulsive.
Anal expulsive, right? So extreme sloppiness here. The other extreme would be the OCD, anal retentive personality there, okay? This one, we haven't got to. Anybody want to guess latency or genital stage for this one? Anybody seen this movie? Can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it directly reflects one of the two stages. I'll explain it in a second. Just a random guess. Mr. Patrick.
Genital.
Ah, good try. You're up to 100%.
Latency.
Latency. Okay. He took a chance this time. Impressive. All right, one other story I wanted to mention before we go on to the latency stage, the phallic stage. So I was sharing this morning. Remember this one? It's really applicable here. You remember this is where a young child competes with the same-sex parent for the love and affection for the opposite-sex parent, right? And a lot of times we reflect back and like, I didn't do that. That's perverse. That's disgusting. I'd never do that, right? But we've all actually had experiences with something like that. Personally, there's been times Preston and I, we'll be hanging out. Again, this is the time period of between like 3 to 5 years of life. We'd be playing toys in the living room or something like that. Something happened. I wouldn't be doing something right? Not doing it the right way. And he'd get upset, get frustrated. He'd express his animosity towards me. And then he'd holler for Mom. And of course, what would happen? Mom would come in, to the rescue, pick him up. In the old house that we had this hallway that you could walk down that leads to the bedrooms. While you're in the living room, there was doorways there, like an open doorway, where you could see the person walking through the hallway. So there's Preston being carried by Mom, and as he passes through this window, the doorway, where I'm sitting in the living room, he looks over at me and he gives me that eye, I gotcha, right? I'm beating you. I'm getting the love and affection from Mom, and you're not, okay? So it reflects that. Of course, ultimately, is there any chance that a young boy beat out Dad for the love and affection of Mom? Any chance? No, it's 0%. We had to make sure that was clear in first class. 0% chance. Never happened. Okay? And then same thing for females. So consequently, you acquire the characteristics of the same-sex parent. You can see in this particular stage, you can see a lot of aspects of the nature component, the nature-nurture debate, right? It's genetics, but it's not genetics in the sense that, items, your personality is not passed down through necessarily genes, but it's through this struggle between parent and child nature side, okay? All right, latency is the cootie stage. What I, personally have identified as the cootie stage. It's early elementary school. It's a time period in which you have same-sex playmates, right? So the guys go hang out with the guys, and the girls go hang out with the girls. And so that's reiterated in the image down there. If you get caught, sneaking over to the other side, then it's assumed that you're acquiring cooties and you're going against your clan that you're a part of, okay? So you acquire a little bit of a stigma when that potentially happens. So in comparison to the oral, anal, and phallic stages, the latency stage is fairly calm. It doesn't necessarily have a body part of conflict or a conflict as a whole, other than staying away from the opposite sex for the most part. Okay. The genital stage, really, with the genital stage, it's almost like a stopping point in the. It's like a destination in the psychosexual stages. It's a revival of sexual interests from the oral, anal, and phallic stages. And Freud would say that if you can meet and get to this destination, the genital stage, this is where it's like puberty on for the remaining portions of our life. So it's a very large window of time. But if you can get here without having developed extreme fixations in any of the previous 4 stages, then he says that your mental health, it'll be all right. You'll be fine. Okay? But if you've developed fixations in these other stages and your libido is knocked off kilter, right? You're gonna have some struggles when you get to this particular point in your life. Okay, may have some struggles with anxiety and depression and those type of things. Okay, now again, Freud theory's a little bit dated. It's more the psychological side, and it has a tendency to be really emphasis is on the male side of things. Okay, his personality theory has been, there's a lot of arguments against it, saying that it's too male dominated and very sexist against females as well. So there's other approaches to personality development in psychology today. There are remnants of his psychosexual stages that still people buy into today quite a bit, but there's some aspects of it that have kind of gone by the wayside as well because of our changing culture, changing family dynamics. Okay? All right, so we're going to move away. Again, our purpose here is to try to think about where does our sense of self come from, and ultimately look at the psychological versus the sociological. And this is like this transition. We're thinking about it like a sliding scale from the psychological internal explanation to the external. This is really social psychology right here with Albert Bandura. We talked about him in psychology class. He's all about observational learning. So you may want to write that out to the side. Observational learning and modeling. He says through that process of observing others, we actually internalize the behaviors and characteristics of others. Consequently, that has a big impact on our development of self. Okay? He says learning is a big part of development of self, would be exceedingly laborious, not to mention hazardous, if people had to rely solely on the effects of their own actions to inform them of what to do. Fortunately, most human behavior is learned observationally through modeling. There's an experiment that he's known for. It's the Bobo doll experiment. You want to write that out to the side for Albert Bandura. What he did with this experiment is he would have young children sit off to the side, and they'd have an adult model that they would watch in a toy room, right? A playroom. And for some of the students, the adult would just play with the toys in an appropriate manner, right? For some of the other young children, the adult would start to take some of the toys and act aggressively towards the Bobo doll itself, okay? Or they would either punch the Bobo doll or, take a mallet and hit the Bobo doll, something like that. Then they took the children and they let them, they removed the adult from the setting, they put the children in that setting then, and they just observed what they would do, right? And the children that observed the aggressive adult, they reiterated what the adult did, right? The children that observed the non-aggressive adult, they didn't demonstrate any type of aggression at all. Okay, so according to his research, he's saying that they are internalizing what they see in the model that they've been presented with. Okay, and so their sense of self, consequently, is influenced by an outside individual. Albert Bandura says there's 3 keys to adopting a modeled behavior. First key, the model behavior is coded, right? It's put into a different type of language, words, labels, images, in which they can receive it. It results in outcomes you value, meaning you observe somebody doing something, and a lot of times you want the results of what they have. So a lot of times it's, if they have this cool factor or this coolness variable, or some variable of success, money, attractiveness, whatever, we, internalize this as we observe them, and we try to pick up on their behaviors and repeat them, emulate them, reflect them, okay? The model is similar to the observer, and it has admired status, okay? So you got to somehow find some similarities between what you're observing and who you are as an individual as well, okay? So we're going to stop a moment and step back for a second and think about how do we differ from animal when it comes to our development of self, right? We have the ability to do some self-reflection at the end of the day. Do animals have the ability to do some self-reflection at the end of the day? No, they don't, right? A dog doesn't say that at the end of the day and say, man, I had a good day today, right? You know, I got a few sticks, chased a few cars, right? It was a good day. They don't do that, right? But we do, okay? And that comes as a result of our physiological development of our brain, right? Our prefrontal cortex enables us to think a little bit differently from the rest of the animal world, right? That's why we don't rely upon instinct to survive like animals do. We rely upon culture to survive, okay? So we've already looked at the TSDs, just to reiterate some things that we talked about before concerning our sense of self. In the 1950s, they identified themselves with roles. In the 1970s, traits. So you can see the social influence, social component here in the change. Some question that we didn't necessarily consider is why do we put more, or do we put more emphasis on who we are rather than what we are today because of the individualistic type of culture that came from the 1960s? And the answer is probably a little bit of yes. Another question for us to consider before we get to Cooley stuff is, you know, noting that our sense of self is influenced by social components, could it be is there a possibility that we could be overly socialized, right? Because of the process of socialization is so strong, is it possible that there's a lot of things that, you know, we lose our sense of humanity and our ability to make decisions and to who we become because of our exposure to other social groups, social components that are outside of us, okay? Something to think about. All right, Cooley. So we've got Freud, then we got Albert Bandura, and now we got Cooley. Cooley is more closer to a sociologist. Sound good? He came up with this concept of the looking glass self. He says our concept of self comes from looking into a social mirror. A social mirror. So we don't actually, you know, you wake up in the morning, you stand in front of a mirror, and you get to see what you look like, okay? A lot of times we don't even have to stand in front of a mirror to get a sense of who we are as a person. All we have to do is we have to look at other people's reactions to us, right? And then we can figure out, you know, if we are attractive, ugly, popular, cool, boring, right? All we have to do is look at the reactions of others around us, okay? If we are good in interpreting their facial expressions, the reaction. I'll give you a specific example. Ironically, this morning when I was getting dressed, the wife walked in. I had my long sleeve shirt on, and I took my polo that I really like, that I've had for many, many years. I actually wear it on every picture day that we have here at the school. So anytime that I show up in the yearbook, I should be wearing this blue polo. That's my goal for the rest of my career. If it ever disintegrates, I'm going to have to get another blue polo. Anyway, so I put the blue polo on over my long sleeves, and she walks in, and she goes like this. Right? She gives me the nod. And so from her reaction, I said, what? You got a problem? And she says, nothing. And I said, you don't like my shirt, do you? And she says, no, I don't. And so I then went ahead and I mirrored what I saw from her, right? Her reaction. And she's like, I didn't do that. And I said, yes, you did. And I got a good idea of what you're communicating, okay? She thought I was exaggerating just a little bit there, okay? So we all do this, right? Every day, whenever we go to class or we walk up and down the halls, our sense of self is being created by the reactions that we see in other people around us, okay? Now, the thing is, some of us, we're good at it, right? Because there's a 3-step process to this development of self with Cooley. We imagine what we look like based off of other people's reactions. Some of us are better at that than others, okay? Some of us are better at the second step than others, interpreting the reactions of others in front of us, okay? And then the ultimate development of our self-concept, okay? I want you to think about 2 entities, and it's kind of like a sliding scale. You have your ideal self, what you think you really are, right? And then your real self over here, okay? People that are good at this, there's not much separation between your ideal self and your real self. It's fairly close together, okay? Because you're good at imagining what you look like and interpreting what you look like based upon other people's reactions, okay? Some people are not so good at that, right? And so what ultimately happens is you have a separation between your ideal self of what you think that you look like and then the reality of what you actually are, okay? And when there is a large gap between your ideal self and real self, that's when you run into some issues, right? You're going to have some complications, anxiety, depression, things like that, okay? Last guy we're going to focus on is George Herbert Mead. I want to remind you that George Herbert Mead is the guy that came up with symbolic interactionism. That is the third theoretical perspective for our study on sociology, right? We have the conflict theory with Karl Marx. We have the functionalist theory, that's Spencer and Durkheim. And then the third theory is symbolic interactionism, that's George Herbert Mead. Apart from what you have up here written on the board, you may want to write out that the idea of symbolic interactionism is saying that the world is just a stage, okay? It's one big stage. And what we are is really, instead of being human beings is the way that we think of it, we're just really, actors on that stage, okay? We're acting. We do a lot of acting. And we just try to fulfill our role, right, on that stage. Our role as a brother, a sister, a male, a female, a teacher, a student, whatever it may be, an athlete, okay, musician. We are just playing that role, okay? So for a second here, I want you to think about what is it that makes an actor so good or an actress so good, right? For the ones that we watch on television that are in our shows, what is it that makes them really, really good, Dylan? They know their part, right? So who they really are as a person is completely separate and different from, their character that they play in the TV show or the movie that they're in, okay? They are able to ingrain their mind, immerse themselves into a totally different identity, okay? And essentially, that's somewhat of what we're doing here with George Herbert Mead's role-taking symbolic interactionism, okay? We have just taken on this identity of a particular person, particular role, and, we're doing a really good job of playing that particular role, okay? He emphasizes language. Maybe I'll put an asterisk next to that. Maybe a test question here. Without language, you can't have role-taking. Without language, you can't have symbolic interactionism. It's a key component there. Once you think about like young people as they are acquiring the roles that they're taking on, what do? They just repeat the speech, the language of other people around them, right? They're imitating. I also want you to remember the Sapir-Whorf thesis, that our sense of reality is contingent upon the language that we speak, right? Mead says that the vital outcome of socialization, the whole purpose, the main goal of us becoming socialized is to be able to anticipate what others expect of us, right? That's when you get good at playing your part in your role. Not only do you know selfishly what your role is, but you're also aware of everybody else's roles around you, and you can almost separate yourself from your role and think about their role and their perspective of you, right? And how they anticipate what is your behavior going to be, okay? If you get good at that, then you can be pretty successful in this world that we live in, according to George Herbert Mead. He says that there's 3 steps to role-taking. This is the last slide. First one is imitation. Second one is play. Third one is games. You think playing games are the same thing? We'll get a little bit, differentiate them here. Imitation, again, young children, what do? They imitate the language of their parents, imitate the language of their peers. They also imitate their behaviors, the behaviors of others. In the process of role taking. Right now, Preston, it's some interesting stuff. He's got to wear these long sleeve shirts, and they got to have a hood on the back of it, right? All of his buddies at preschool, that's what they got. They got a long sleeve with a hood. Thing is, Preston doesn't have one. Closest thing he's got to it is like his jacket that he wears. It's got long sleeves zipped up, but it's got a hood on the back. So what does he do? It's hot outside, but he's imitating what he sees from everybody else. So he's got like 4 layers on, including this jacket that pretty much wears throughout the entirety of the winter because it's got a hood on the back of it, right? He's imitating what he sees. He wears shorts over like sweatpants now. I'm not sure mom and dad never showed him how to do that, right? He's picking up that stuff. And then I looked at a cover of a book that we've been reading. It's called Captain Awesome. And he says he gets this stuff from his friends at preschool. But Captain Awesome wears his shorts over his sweatpants. And he also wears a hood long sleeve shirt as well, with shirts over top of it as well. I think he wants to be Captain Awesome. Play. Did you guys ever play games whenever you were younger? Like play grown-up stuff, right? Did you play like house, right? That's a common one. Or anybody play banker? Play banker. Growing up, right? Steal everybody's money. Anybody play farm? I played farm all the time, right? Nobody played farm in here?
Wait, what's farm?
Farm is you are the farmer, right? And you got all your machinery and stuff, and you plant crops, and then you've got my sisters were always like the, you know, like the wife, and they would always, you know, make lunch and stuff, and they bring the food out to the farmers, right? You never did that? No? What did you guys do?
School.
You played school, right? There you go. So somebody gets to be the teacher, and everybody else gets to be the students, right?
Like Cowboys and Indians.
Cowboys and okay, that's fine. Somebody said Star Wars this morning. I was like, this is definitely different. I said, that's why you wear black all the time? Darth Vader. Cops and robbers. Okay, so that's play. You're essentially role taking. You're practicing role taking when you do that. Okay, I may have mentioned this before, but Preston's favorite thing to do is he calls it setup, right? And he gets to play the role of dad, and his favorite character there is little boy. Mom plays the role of little boy. Little boy always gets in trouble. Little boy always does what Preston would really be doing, and then he gets to lay down the law and issue all the consequences for little boy for everything that he does wrong. Okay? Again, he's
You would think he would learn something from that.
he's learning. It's just he doesn't want to admit to it sometimes. All right, games is different. And again, the games are much more complex than just play because there's so many different rules and so many different variables that are involved here. But if you're going to be successful in games, what you have to do is you have to be able to identify your particular role as a teammate and the roles of your teammates around you, as well as the roles of the opponent opposite of you. And if you can juggle all those concepts, then you can be successful in those games that you play. Okay? But again, it's a lot about knowing what is going on in your mind, your teammate's mind, your opponent's mind, and taking all that into consideration. And what does that do? That if you get good at that, it makes you successful in like the workplace later on in life, right? Because you can internalize what you see in other people around you. Okay? Anybody have any thoughts, questions before we finish up today? No? All right. We're about out of time. I appreciate your attention today.